This is CJSW's Municipal election coverage, your audio guide to Calgary's 2025 election. This series gives you interviews with candidates running for office, exploring the people, policies, and issues that will shape Calgary's future. We're broadcasting from CJSW 90.9 FM, located at the University of Calgary, on the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta. Before we begin, we would like to remind listeners that the views expressed in this podcast are those of the candidates and the interview subjects, and not those of CJSW or its staff. Today, we're taking you to the fastest growing ward in Calgary. Known for its young families, vibrant new communities, and rapid expansion, today is all about Ward 12. Ward 12 covers the edge of Calgary's southeast quadrant, spanning from inner suburbs to city limits. The communities included in Ward 12 are Auburn Bay, Copperfield, Cranston, McKenzie Towne, New Brighton, Rangeview, Hotchkiss, Mahogany, Seton, and Shepard. We went directly to citizens of Ward 12 to ask them what they're feeling this election season.
It's a peace and nice and beautiful, good community, and the clean and everything.
Everything is very accessible, walkable if you want to. It's a great place. Obviously, it's getting busier and busier. The streets are narrow here. They were designed to be narrow to slow traffic down, and that hasn't really worked that well. So I think sometimes the traffic is a bit heavy at times and also too fast.
Yeah, they're great at developing the community, but they don't allow for parking. More parking, better zoning. But we all know what's happening in Calgary, so.
We believe in voting. You can't complain if you don't vote. I feel that not only do they have to focus on the community, but they have to look at the community with the broader scope of the city. That while their focus should be on the issues within the community, they'll only be solved if they look outwards.
Now that we've heard what's on the minds of Ward 12 residents, let's turn to the people hoping to represent them. We reached out to nominated candidates and trustees running in the 2025 general election to participate in this podcast. The following interviews feature only those candidates who responded and were available to participate within our production timeline. To ensure consistency, we selected about 1 minute of each candidate's response to include in this episode. The audio is presented unedited, and we've aimed to fairly represent each participant's message and voice. We remain committed to providing space for all voices and encourage voters to learn more about every candidate by visiting electionscalgary.ca. Since his election in 2021, Evan Spencer has represented Ward 12 at City Hall. On January 10th, Spencer announced he would not be seeking re-election this fall, stating, "I stand by my decisions as your councillor, but willingly admit that trust has eroded during this term." Without an incumbent candidate in the running, we have new faces entering the race in Ward 12. Now it's time to hear from the candidates themselves. We asked each of them the same set of questions to help you compare their priorities, values, and vision for Ward 12. On social services, what do you believe is the city's role in supporting vulnerable Calgarians through social services such as mental health support and harm reduction? Running with a Better Calgary Party, we have Mike Jamieson.
Well, primarily, I believe this is a provincial issue because it is to do with healthcare. But I do believe that because it is in the city of Calgary, the city does have a role to play because a lot of our essential services go toward this topic, for example, police and fire. But I believe that any city's goal should be to have safe housing for everyone. In my past and in the relationships I have, we all have people that struggle with either addiction or mental illness, or even housing is a big crisis right now. And what I've found is that even close friends to me that if they have a safe place to lay their head, they have a chance of recovery. And I don't think that you can get to the second thing without the first thing. So I think Calgary does need to do a better job in making available spaces for people to sleep, and a safe places, and that's the key. There are a lot of great non-for-profit groups that do a great job of this, but I think that the city can do a better job in assisting the provincial government.
Running with the Calgary Party, Sarah Ferguson.
The City of Calgary has a lot of great partnerships within the communities, like, as an example, the Alpha House and other nonprofits that do a lot of the hard work already. I think our role is supporting those groups that are doing the work and making sure that their resources are being utilized well and making sure that they have those resources that they need. We know the CPS would love to increase their program with Alpha House for helping individuals that are struggling in the public and with social disorder and social disturbances, and then also relying on building our partnership with other levels of government that have more resources and more ways to help within those zones.
On affordable housing, what specific policies or initiatives would you support to improve housing affordability and accessibility in Calgary? From Mike Jameson.
So I think Calgary does an okay job with their program, Calgary Housing. They have a lot of properties around the city, and these are typically low-income facilities and spaces that most people can afford. What I think the city needs more, and I think it comes down to that they need. You need more beds, more houses. A lot of single parents, have children, and they need to feel safe. They need to be close to schools, and close to transit. And I think that when the city's making their decisions to increase the budget and sort of thing for Calgary housing, I think particularly that is one particular aspect that the city can grow in, and I support the growth of that because it already helps tens of thousands of people in the city, but I really believe that they need more.
From Sarah Ferguson.
The City of Calgary has an incredible housing task force that has the best ideas, and we just need to go through them and look at ways that we can work with the people that are the smart people in the room with this topic. Calgary has a lot of great ideas and great resources, and we have both ability to densify and to continue to grow. So it's a matter of listening to the smart people in the room when it comes to finding housing affordability and making sure we're working with our different levels of government as well to help support us in those endeavors.
On transportation, what is your vision for improving traffic flow and public transit in your ward and across the city? From Mike Jameson.
I would say that every single house I go to, this has brought either the first or the second concern. And this is coming right from people that live in Ward 12. So Ward 12 is speaking very clearly that we need the Green Line to be extended to the South Campus Hospital. And, unfortunately, things take a long time. And you need to get the funding allocated, then engineering. And I'm not sure how many years it's going to take for it to get to Shepard, which is actually the last stop, which is 130th Avenue. So what I can do as your counselor, I can advocate for the funding to be earmarked for the train to go along 52nd Street South to the South Hospital, and hopefully in 1 to 2 term period, I could advocate to get the funding approved and the engineering started, so that at least I can do my part.
From Sarah Ferguson.
So for Ward 12, the Green Line is the hot topic, right? And it is happening right now. We're going to have it come out to just behind 130th, the Shepard station. So that's really exciting. This is moving forward. So that alone is going to improve transit out there, but that's like 2031 before we're going to have our first riders on that. That's still a ways away, and our transit is really bad. So we are getting upgraded BRT on 52nd Street. That's going to be huge, but we still need to focus on those connections into those ones and how they are going to get us around the city faster. That transit's a viable option for us. That alone will help improve traffic flow and, to make sure that this is a viable option. Not every house has to have a car per driver, that we can have the choice where we want to have, one car per household instead. And then of course the traffic safety piece of that will come along, but we also need to advocate, make sure we're getting the safer streets we need with crosswalks and speed reduction. And those are huge important pieces. And those are the pieces that I've heard about for the past 4 years working in the Ward 12 office that I want to continue advocating for.
On public safety, how would you balance community safety with calls for accountability and reform in our police, fire, and emergency services? From Mike Jamieson.
They need more police officers. So I am in favor of increasing the police budget to directly hire more police officers on the street. That is something that I think should be the priority of the city in supporting CPS. The Calgary Fire Department, well, that's a different story, but they also, I believe, do not have enough stations, especially in Ward 12, because fire is actually the first responder to most emergency calls. So when you talk about police, you have to talk about fire because most likely fire will get there before police. And so I think that, we do need to support our essential services. It's the only way to make streets safer is we need more police. Sorry, not the only way, but I think it's the main way. It's the best way to spend your money.
From Sarah Ferguson.
Our Calgary Police Service is a huge topic I've had the privilege of learning a lot about, and how things are working, where things are not working, and especially, within the ideas coming from within the Calgary Police Service. So, we know we're currently struggling with retention and hiring, and having those resources met are going to be a challenge, but also an exciting challenge to help work with them to find those gaps. Also focusing on the fact that, our fire services, everything has less funding these days than it used to per capita. We need to make sure that they have the resources for what they need to do to make sure that we are safe, that they're responding in time. And it's a big job, and it's a lot of money that needs to be focused on this, and it is the job of a municipality to focus on that. And I love that work, and I'd love to continue building those relationships and advocating for those pieces.
On environment, how would you approach environmental sustainability in Calgary, particularly around land development, waste management, and water conservation? From Mike Jamieson.
And you need to, in my opinion, the city needs to make sure that they don't overreach with the development. As somebody that I do consider myself pro development, but we desperately do need to protect our green spaces for not only future, the future generations, but you have to have, again, I don't think there's enough places in the city for kids to play, green spaces. I think we need more, and I think that there has to be a balance. So as somebody that I do like creating beautiful things, we need to respect areas that make sense in communities and not overdevelop them. That's very, very important because it's easy to do. And I think that goes hand in hand with protecting the environment in the three ways that you just said.
From Sarah Ferguson.
The environment's a huge conversation these days, and it is important. We need to be more resourceful with everything that we're using these days, and sustainability is good financial viability. So we need to be on top of making sure that we are being good stewards to our resources and also financially being aware of how we are using them. Obviously, right now we have competing crises between everything, and environmental concerns can fall into even third or fourth place. But where we can save that money is crucial points for being good stewards with our environment.
On education. While education is largely a provincial responsibility, How do you see the city collaborating with school boards to support accessible and quality education in your ward? From Mike Jameson.
And then if you speak to any teacher, and I've spoke to a lot of teachers already, they would say they don't have enough resources and they don't have enough support service in the classroom, and the classrooms are too big, which then goes back to you need more facility. I think a lot of it, I've got a construction background, and I think a lot of it comes down to the infrastructure. The current City of Calgary public schools are old. The same junior high, I'm a born and raised Calgarian, and the same junior high that I went to is still existing. The same high school, which was Lord Beaverbrook High School, is still existing. And they're old. And I'm glad that you can see, like in Seton, there's a brand new high school. Well, it's a few years old now, but it's one of the newest. But it's overcapacitated right now. And so I think that the way that the city can partner with the province is to allocate the land and free up some of the barriers to get schools built quickly. That is the key. We need more infrastructure. Full stop.
From Sarah Ferguson.
Ward 12 residents are always struggling with the schools in their communities. You know, we have a lot of new communities and the schools come too late. They're all bursting at the seams. Our kids are getting sent out of communities. We need to really work with the province on making sure that those schools are getting built as they're needed and not when they're bursting at the seams and the resources are too tight. We really need to stand up and help our teachers right now and to make sure that they are getting the supports they need, so our kids are having the supports they need. And we need to make sure that we are continuing to advocate for our tax dollars that go to education are staying within our city as much as possible to support where the population really is. And Ward 12 is a huge example of that. We need schools in Ward 12, and we need to have those solid relationships to advocate for them.
On arts and culture. How will you support local arts and culture as a part of Calgary's identity? From Mike Jameson.
I want to see more than anything a vibrant downtown. But what it's going to take is it's going to take a lot of small businesses returning to downtown to fill this vacancy, which is, some say right now, over 30% still. And I don't think replacing that commercial vacancy with housing is the answer. I think we need business. We need business to return, and business brings beauty. And I know a lot of times people don't think it's connected. They think that art's over here and business over here. It's not, because business spend the money to make their area, their storefronts, their sidewalks, their area beautiful. And I would far rather see small business invest that money than the taxpayer. And that's all connected to art, because you can't have a beautiful city without beautiful art. But you also need money to pay for the art.
From Sarah Ferguson.
Lived in Calgary my whole life. I'm raised here. The art scene has been such a treat. I love it so much. It's so great. I love going to the theater. I love our local music scene. In my younger days, I was much more involved in it. But where we're at now is, we are watching the budget real tight these days. We've got to make sure what we're doing is bringing back value to our city and to the people living here. So unfortunately, arts is often one of those things that does take a ding. So other ways that we can support is absolutely using our voice, getting out to support the arts themselves and making sure that we have that platform and we're listening to the needs and how the city can get out of the way of certain things so that they're not using extra funds and extra resources to do the things they want to do, and that the city can support them, even if it's not necessarily always financially, and finding the ways that that the city can lift these voices that are an incredible art scene in our city.
On community. In what ways do you try to give back to your community? From Mike Jameson.
There's a lot of programs and people in the city that are in need, and I'll just read some of the. I've got my literature here that I've handed to 38,000 doors. But yeah, so in the past decade, I volunteered at the Calgary Drop-In Center, Operation Christmas Child, which provide shoe boxes, presents for children in many different countries. I volunteered in some community cleanup efforts on some other political campaigns, and I really feel connected at the community level in the village of Prestwick in McKenzie town. This is where I live and where I support the community the most.
From Sarah Ferguson.
I love volunteering. Volunteering is like a huge part of who I am and my history that's got me to where I am today. I started off on my community association. My advocacy through that got me my job in the Ward 12 office, which has now led me to running for city council. I love going out to community events. I love being there and showing, and like it is bucket filling stuff. This is what's really gets me through the hard days, is getting out, helping people, connecting with the people in my communities. Bigger, like the nonprofits in our city are also incredible. I love being involved and getting out to see how I can help them, how I can lift their voices of the people doing the hard work. And just getting out to do those things is such an important part of who I am and who this city is. And I want to continue doing that work.
We note that Indigenous groups have their own bodies of governance, but as we are on shared land, we dedicated a question to decolonization. What is your understanding of Calgary's responsibilities under the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action? From Mike Jameson.
Well, I think we need to, be respectful and, inclusive of all people in Calgary. The Indigenous community has the history, and I've got a lot of Indigenous friends, and you know what, I support their the celebration of their traditions. I do, and I would do the same thing, and I would be the same way if I had a 2,000 or whatever year old history and tradition and family. And my family comes from Scotland, however many generations ago. And, as disconnected as that is, I feel some kind of a, maybe a connection, far off connection to Scotland somehow. But I support the fact that they want to have their culture celebrated and respected. And I'm very much in favor of doing that.
From Sarah Ferguson.
Really an incredible time to be right now, where there is so much conversation around the Truth and Reconciliation. And, it's such an honor to learn more about our Indigenous cultures that were here first. And I love it. I love these voices. I love hearing them. I love lifting them. And I love that they've become like a regular part that we do, land acknowledgements and how my kids are learning in school. And it's incredible. And I want to continue to foster those relationships and make sure that we are doing what we can do and listening to what more we can always do, and make sure that we're doing our best to recognize and to make things as good as we can with these communities that are a huge part of our history.
Finally, we gave each candidate a moment to share any closing remarks. From Mike Jameson.
Okay, well, I've decided to run because I really love the city. I'm a born and raised Calgarian, and I want to see it. Yeah, I want to see it grow in the right direction. I think that there's an emphasis on a lot of other things right now in the city that are outside municipal jurisdiction. And so my big thing is as a partner in a construction company and a business owner, is that I want to see the city return to the things that matter most to the everyday Calgarian. And what I mean by that is I want us to put a stronger focus on roads, on fixing potholes, on repairing water mains, or maintenance of our water system, of, public safety, essential services like garbage collection. These are municipal issues. And with the cost of living go up and affordability is such a thing for people nowadays, we have to spend our money in the right places. I'm speaking right now to a university crowd here, and I put the call out, I encourage everybody to get involved. And the reason why I'm taking this podcast is because I want to connect to a younger generation here and say, look, what does everybody want? We want jobs. We want opportunity. We want to be able to make money. We want to be able to buy a house. This is what we want. Well, how do you do that? Well, we need a vibrant, growing small business in this city. We need the entrepreneurship, the spirit to be revived, and people, I think, want to do that, but they're a little bit scared.
From Sarah Ferguson.
I love how our city works, and I love the communities of Ward 12, and that is why I'm doing this in the first place. I want to represent my people in Ward 12. I want to represent my people of my city, and I want to make sure that we are having these conversations and getting out to talk to people to make sure that we are representing the best we can. Right now, my focus is how our city works. It's really exciting. I love, talking about pothole technology and like how we can repair our roads to get them to the point that people are happy with this again. And our green spaces, our local businesses, like everybody is struggling right now in different degrees. And we need to focus as a city on how we can either get out of the way of certain things, but also support. And this work is exciting, building these relationships within these communities, within our nonprofits, within every aspect of our city is such an incredible privilege that I've had. And I really want to continue being here for our city in the best way I can. And I think this is the next step for me. And this is where I can really help and do the good work and use all this knowledge that I've managed to gain over my lifetime around the city, over my decade plus of volunteering, and in the past 4 years in the Ward 12 office. So, I'd love to continue these conversations, and I want to keep working hard, and I want to keep working hard for my communities.
That wraps up our conversations with your ward candidates. We hope their insights help you feel more informed heading into the 2025 general election. Now, we're shifting our focus to another important group of elected officials, school board trustees. Trustees play a critical role in shaping the direction of public education. They're responsible for setting priorities, approving budgets, and making decisions that impact students, families, and communities across their school jurisdictions. While their work often happens behind the scenes, it has a direct effect on the quality of education in Calgary. Just like councillors, trustees are elected during the municipal election. To find out which board you vote for, whether it's the Calgary Board of Education, Calgary Catholic School District, or another publicly funded board, you can visit electionscalgary.ca and use the Where Do I Vote tool. We reached out to all nominated trustee candidates running in this ward, inviting them to participate in this podcast. The interviews you're about to hear include only those candidates who responded and were available within our production timeline. To keep things fair and concise, we've selected about 1 minute from each candidate's response. The audio is presented unedited, and we've done our best to ensure every participant's voice is clearly and accurately represented. Let's now hear from the trustee candidates running in this ward. What are your top 3 priorities for Calgary schools, and how do you plan to address them during your term? Running as a public school board trustee candidate, Brian Martin.
The first top 3 priorities would be classroom complexity, classroom room sizes, and supports for teachers. And all that just follows back into the ability to support our students. Right now we have very large classrooms. We don't keep track of the classrooms due to, apparently back in 2019, we removed classroom counts due to red tape production. We have complex classrooms, which are sort of being addressed, hit and miss. We have a lot of complexity. We have English as a second language, students above and below grade average. And then you just have just people with learning disabilities, ADHD, anxiety, and those are some of the A's, that we have there. And then just support for our teachers. We're currently potentially going through a teacher strike. They're looking for, more access to their classrooms, more funding. And if you just look at complexity and just class sizes alone, those are just the two huge issues that we're dealing with right now.
How will you ensure equitable access to quality education for students across all communities, including those from marginalized or underserved backgrounds? From Brian Martin.
I think with equitable access to education, that's a primary thing with the public school board. The big thing with public school is we accept everybody, regardless of everything, race, orientation, disability, where they come from, where they belong. The public school board, we take everybody. And I think that's extremely important. And as we go across the city, some students are missing out. Again, with the large classroom sizes, inadequate funding to different school areas. Back in my ward, 12 and 14, we're looking at huge expansion down, large quantities of students moving in, and just not enough space. So they're not getting the same quality education as somebody who's in a spot that has smaller class sizes. So it's a big push in my area in 12 and 14 to really get some of those new schools built up if we can, getting those portables brought in, bringing in more teachers and more EAs, education assistants to support those teachers. Because there are a lot of students coming in with English as a second language, and they need as much support as those who have English as their first language. So it's really important.
How will you engage with parents, teachers, and students, and the broader community to ensure transparency and responsiveness in decision-making? From Brian Martin.
I think this is a great question on just how to communicate with the students and the parents. I know currently I've recently gone to the CBE trustee website, and there just isn't a lot of transparency or a lot of issues on there that I can see that they're pushing. Between classroom sizes, complexity, support for our teachers, testing, it all seems to be just kind of, walk behind a wall. I'm not really sure why that is, as just like we don't count classroom sizes anymore. So I think for myself is to see as a trustee, and I don't know everything, trustees have limited access to certain things. They don't have all the skills or all the access to everything they can. So it would be my first, time as trustee is get in there and see what can I do? What can I produce? What am I allowed to show? What can I actually be transparent on? And attend the school board meetings, attend classrooms, visit all the schools, talk to the principals, talk to the teachers. There's lots of community support. Talk to the communities, talk to the students. There's events going on at schools all the time. The school by my house, Centennial, is got a parents' council meeting tomorrow. So I'm going to attend that tomorrow just to show my support and find out where those are. So you have to be engaged in the community and really just, put an honest effort and be transparent. What do they want, what you want.
What is your position on the role of schools in addressing issues such as mental health, inclusion, and anti-racism? How would you support initiatives in these areas? From Brian Martin.
Disabilities, complex needs, schools have, really become this melting box of everything. So I think to support that, and I think it's important. So we need to have those counselors in there that students can go to. Back in my day, we used to have, a resource counselors and the police counselor. Well, I can't remember what they were called, but they're there. So for school safety type of thing. So we're missing out on, it shouldn't just be teachers teaching the basics. It should be teachers, EAs, counselors, mental support. All those things are valuable to support great children and really get them in the best environment to learn. And I think we're missing out on the best environment to learn for our students right now.
With ongoing concerns about education funding and class sizes in Alberta, how will you advocate for the resources schools need while working within budget constraints? From Brian Martin.
Yeah, no, the budget's interesting because it's not set by the school boards, it's set by the province. So we're stuck there. We do have the lowest funding per student in Canada, and we do say that we have some of the best testing in Canada. Those tests are delayed, so I'm not sure if those are still relevant, and it'd be interesting to see how that goes. But it also proves if we do have the best funding and we do have the highest class sizes, then we also have the best teachers. So if we have the best teachers, then we should be making sure that we're keeping the best teachers. And that's with, things that are also outside of the trustee zone. So these are, again, the provincial side of it. So working within the budget, I think you have to, look at the budget and see what are the most important things and what things that need to be supported. And right now we do have, we don't have enough schools. We apparently have too many students per class. I know we do, but officially we don't. So if we don't have the numbers, we don't have the data, we don't have all that information, we can't make informed choices. And we really need to make informed choices based on what we see in our schools and what's happening. So I, as a trustee, would push for more money. I would push for more resources for our entire students, because students are first. They need to be educated well, and we need to provide them with all the information and all the ability that they can to be great people.
Is there anything else you want people to know? From Brian Martin.
Yeah, no, thanks. I think it's the big thing is, it's the trustees, get overlooked. During the election, most people walk into the trustees. Most people walk in to vote. They look at the list of trustees. They go, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. That name looks good. I really hope that people get out there and just do their research on who the trustees are, what their roles and their jobs really are, what they can and can't do, and really look at what we need for our students. We have, overcapacity. We have complex needs. We need more support for our teachers. There's a lot of things we need, and unfortunately, they're going to cost money. But there's other ways to get around that, and we can just, we can support them. Public school trustees are limited in scope, but they need to fight out loud for other students, and most importantly, advocate for our students. These are very important things, and without great education, which I think is one of the forefronts of society, is amazing education. Let's get the supports they need. Let's have just great students, and not just educational wise, but just socially wise. They need to have great kids. Let's make them better. Let's just make them better.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of CJSW's Municipal Election coverage. I hope today's conversation brought you a little closer to your community and the people who want to lead it. I'm your host, Emma, and all of the source material for this episode can be found in the episode description. Remember to visit electionscalgary.ca for more information on every candidate and to check your voter registration. Again, we would like to remind listeners that the views expressed in this podcast are those of the candidates and the interview subjects, and not those of CJSW or its staff. And make sure to visit cjsw.com or the CJSW app to check out our voter education episode and our exclusive mayoral debate. Until then, take care, and please vote, follow, and share.